What's going on, YouTube? This is your boy ThatSingerReactions coming to y'all. Special request. I was about to say, I don't know what I was going to say, but a special request from my best friend Ethan. Shout out to you. This is your request. I know you was getting on me about I don't do your requests anymore. He was about to cry and all this stuff. So I'm doing your request, and this is actually probably a really good one because this is the worst WrestleMania main event ever. I'm interested to see something on this list. I feel like you're trying to prove some kind of point to me or something about maybe a previous conversation we done had, and it's probably something that made the list. But this, you know, we'll see what you got. But let's jump into this. Don't forget my Patreon is in the description where you get exclusive access, early content, special requests. PayPal is open right now, so feel free to send me whatever you want to send me. I have a second YouTube channel called Hear Me Out. I just actually posted 2 new videos. So click on my homepage of this channel and you will see that at the very bottom, you can't miss it, big animation, Hear Me Out sign thing. So yeah, let's jump into this. I got it semi-transparent so I don't get blocked. Is this the one where Hulk Hogan just won the belt and just like left?
Whether you're a lifelong wrestling fan or someone just starting out, whether you're happy about it or mad about it, one thing that wrestling fans have in common this time of year is the passion people have when talking about...
Is this new? Even new. Oh, 1 day ago. He just released this. Okay. Let me subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Shout out to him. I'm going to give you a like, brother. And all this stuff. Because I'm using your video.
WrestleMania, especially as it relates to who belongs in the main event. To be in the main event of WrestleMania is the dream of almost every aspiring wrestler at some point in their careers. It's the be-all end-all. The eyes of the world are upon...
Wait, maybe this don't got to be transparent, because if he did anything, he would have got blocked for it, right? So I think I can show this probably.
You. It's an endorsement saying you are one of the absolute best in the industry. The number of men and women who have held that top spot in the card is but a fraction of all those who have participated over the years, a who's who of the titans of our business. It's the object of every fan's predictions and fantasy booking. The debate over who should or shouldn't be in that position is endless. For many, it's the spot that everyone dreams about. That being said, it doesn't mean that those matches are immune to sucking every now and then. Just because WrestleMania is often the biggest show of the year doesn't guarantee that it's the best. For every positive moment in that event's history, there's always...
I know Taker and Roman making the list.
A couple of bad ones as well. And when it comes to the main event, those deficiencies can really shine through. Which is why I'm here. This week, I'm gonna rank up my picks for the top 8 worst WrestleMania main events of all time. Let's begin.
Let's go.
Number 8, Psycho Sid versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 13. The year was 1997, with WCW winning the ratings war and Shawn Michaels losing his...
By the way, it has to be noted that this is his opinion. What he might consider his worst, we might have other stuff in ours. So I think people shouldn't take what certain people say to heart all the time, because at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to somebody's opinion. Like that guy Dave, he's a biased guy when it comes to AEW. You know what I'm saying? So everything he puts out, he's not right about, you know, in terms of who he think is the top this and top. No, it's your opinion too. Like, you're not special.
Smile, Vince McMahon went into full-on panic mode, which historically meant to push the big guys. Shawn's injury in February led to a little bit of championship hot potato before the belt finally settled on Psycho Sid. As the runner-up in the Final 4 match in February, Taker became the #1 contender and the bout was on. Now, instead of a planned return match between HBK and Bret Hart, fans got a much slower-paced match featuring a heel that most of the audience liked,
I didn't know this main event,
and a babyface who had a hard time gathering sympathy in The Undertaker. Though Taker's later era WrestleMania matches were held to a high standard of competence, workmanship, and storytelling, there was none of that business going on 6 matches into the streak. If the slow plotting action between these two guys wasn't bad enough, it was also...
Him versus King Kong Bundy was just, what the hell was that? That match was just... I just liked the match just to see Taker in character, you know, the slow sit-ups and stuff, but that match was like Taker won, I think, by jumping off the ropes with a clothesline or either slamming him. It was one
frequently
of them.
interrupted by an
Horrible.
angry Bret Hart, which only reminded the fans that the show had already been stolen by he and Steve Austin earlier in the night. A match so lackluster and forgettable that Taker's victory pose is the only thing from it they ever invoked.
Oh, God.
In hindsight, the match kind of felt like the official end of that old way of thinking that the bigger guys had to be in the main event, as the style of wrestling and fans' taste in wrestlers was trending faster and smaller. Though you could argue they had no choice but to put Taker and Sid in the main event spot because of Shawn Michaels' injury, Bret and Stone Cold was right there. Number 7, Triple H versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 32. After this year, Roman Reigns will have main evented WrestleMania a whopping 7 times. Now, of that number where he actually belonged in the main event, that number's more like half. It's been covered a bit already on this channel, but it bears repeating just how chaotic and downright frustrating it was to be a fan in late 2015, early 2016. The Roman Reigns experiment still had a less than favorable success rate as his potential Mania opponents were dropping like flies. Longtime champion Seth Rollins had gone down with a knee injury, and his rumored backup in John Cena also was put on the shelf for a few months. With those guys out, who better to put over the big dog than Triple H?
Oh, I remember that.
No, seriously. Wasn't there somebody better? There had to have been someone in the back who was still healthy and active who could do it, right? Once the leader of the Authority came into the Royal Rumble at number 30 to win the match and the title in the process, it all became very clear where this was headed, and the fans couldn't have cared less.
But it's about money. It's about money. It was about who would draw. Triple H is still a draw. I don't care if he really can't wrestle or not. So even if they had somebody healthy back there, who's box office like Triple H?
Title in the process, it all became very clear where this was headed, and the fans couldn't have cared less. A champion that people got tired of seeing a long time ago going against a challenger many fans didn't want to see exist. Oh, and he, by the way, is definitely going to win this in the end. So, thanks for the warning. WWE did the build to this match no favors by constantly teasing that maybe Dean could be champion before ultimately keeping it on the game, and then it was time for the actual match. WrestleMania 32 was already kind of a disappointment up to that point, but this match brought it to a whole new level of suck. The match was agonizingly long, and the crowd took a dump all over it, save for Stephanie's big bump at the end. Roman finally reached the top of the mountain, blah-de-blah, and the fans crapped on it so much they actually turned the crowd audio way down on the live broadcast during the celebration. The match might have been better if they cut about 10 minutes or so out of it, but that's just the way things were at the time.
Okay,
the
that's
older
a
and more
fact. There ain't
venerated
no
Triple
opinion,
H
so
got, the more
wow.
epic his WrestleMania matches just had to be. By which I mean long and boring. And here's another example. Number 6, Triple H versus Randy Orton, WrestleMania 25.
I feel like that is why you sent me this, so I can see this. You ain't slick, Ethan.
Hunter's tradition of arduously long WrestleMania matches began way sooner than that 30.
If he says something about Randy Orton being boring or something about his pace, I know this is why you sent me this.
In Dallas. It got really bad about 7 years earlier in Houston during the show's 25th anniversary. Remember back in 2004 when white-hot heel Randy Orton won the world title, then was made to be a babyface after being betrayed by Triple H for no reason, sending his career into a tailspin that took months for him to recover from? Well, 4 years later, the H-Man decided his work wasn't done. As the clock turned to the year 2009, Orton was a diabolical and psychotic heel, feuding with the McMahon family and winning the Royal Rumble match. First, it seemed as though Orton wanted to fight Triple H for the title, then he didn't, then H basically dared him to avenge what happened back in 2004, and he went along with it. Then he had to sell for Vince and Shane McMahon. Wow, what a scary, imposing heel. I wonder how Triple H will overcome this. Orton would steal a smooch from an unconscious Stephanie McMahon, to which Triple H would respond with a home invasion. The incident saw Trips attack Orton in front of his fake wife before throwing him out the window of his fake house, and before long the stage was set for what was sure to be a compelling and potentially violent display in the main event at WrestleMania. Only instead of that, they added a rule at the last minute saying Triple H would lose the title if he got disqualified, which meant all that build, all that personal animosity they had in the weeks leading up to this led to a regular match. Triple H blasted Orton in the head with a punt and a sledgehammer with the referee down, as any babyface would do, as the fans kept looking up to the ramp because something else had to happen at this point, right? Well, no. Helmsley simply ground his opponent to dust and won to retain the title. Anyone who had to follow the Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels was going to be toast. But for a match with as much drama and story built into it, their Mania main event landed with a thud. Number 5. Hulk Hogan vs. Sid Justice, WrestleMania 8. In 1992, putting Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair up against each other at WrestleMania seemed like a no-brainer, a license to print money. But as we've learned many times over the decades, there's no such thing as a sure thing in wrestling. A lot of factors went into that match.
I mean,
not
it's Hulk Hogan. He can't wrestle.
Planned. For starters, the steroid scandal and Hogan's role in it, especially his poorly received appearance.
I'm sorry, Hogan was just a big fraud to me. Dude is a fraud. Like, I'm sorry, I know he's a lot of people's childhood heroes, but this dude was just phony to me. Steroid use. Yeah, everything down to your muscles was weak. Like, I mean...
For starters, the steroid scandal and Hogan's role in it, especially his poorly received appearance on the Arsenio Hall show where he lied about his usage, put a hurting on his public image. Not only that, they actually did a test run of Hogan vs. Flair at a series of house shows on the West Coast to poor results, causing the Federation to get cold feet. To add to the chaos, Vince McMahon had recently lured Sid Vicious away from WCW with the promise of a WrestleMania main event program with the Hulkster. That angle got its start at the Royal Rumble, where the New York crowd audibly booed the once Teflon hero for pulling Sid out of the ring. The previously announced match of Hogan and Flair was altered once Sid made things personal, abandoning Hulk in a tag team match and then destroying Brother Brutai's barbershop. Hogan offered to forgo his shot against Flair in favor of a chance of revenge against Sid, which was soon being hinted at as Hogan's farewell match. Lol. The image of Hogan taking an awestruck gander at a 70% full Hoosier Dome really feels like a watershed moment for his career. The match itself was nothing special, but things really fell apart in the end. Papa Shango missed his cue to break up the pinfall, forcing Sid to kick out of the vaunted leg drop. It led to an awkward DQ finish, the groaner of all groaners for any main event, much less for the biggest show of the whole year.
Papa Shango?
By the return of the Ultimate Warrior coming to the rescue, before the show ended with the typical image of Hogan posing. Contrast that with the other main event of the show that saw Randy Savage defend the honor of his wife and claim his second world title from Flair, and it makes you think that swapping the two matches might have helped things end on a stronger note. Number 4. Roddy Piper vs. Mr. T in a boxing match, WrestleMania 2. When you have a hit on your hands, you run the risk of going to the well once too often, causing things to get ruined. And that's almost what happened at WrestleMania 2. The second edition of the show didn't just double down, they tripled down with 3 different locations, 3 main events, a bunch of pro football players, and every 2-bit celebrity who had the slightest bit of fame during the era. You want to know just how desperate the WWF was at this time? They got 2, count them, 2 hamburger spokespeople. That being said, it made sense for the Federation to call up Mr. T once again, considering how pivotal he was to the success of the first Mania 1 year prior. But by now, T was old hat and thoroughly overexposed in other forms of media. Not only that, but the Hot Rod had legitimate contempt for the A-Team star back then. He felt that T was a prima donna and didn't want to pull back the curtain for him even a little, and did everything he could to mess with T in the lead-up to their boxing match at Mania. Though it wasn't the final match of the entire show, it was the main event for the crowd at Nassau Coliseum, so it still counts in my book. The company was so worried about what Piper could do in the ring, they had him tape his hands in the shape of fists before putting his gloves on. So when the bell rang, you had one guy who couldn't throw anything resembling a legitimate blow going up against a guy who was afraid to get hit. Even in this abbreviated 3-round matchup, T got visibly blown up in short order. The New York audience soon turned on T and began cheering Piper, the hated villain. Finally, this anticlimactic bout ended with Piper body slamming his opponent and getting disqualified as a result, but at least the crowd was happy for it. This whole thing was sloppy and the opposite of great, which is why it shows up on this list, but fortunately, Piper and T were able to finally bury the hatchet in 2014. Number 3. John Cena vs. The Miz, WrestleMania 27.
See, now this is in my opinion why this is definitely opinionated, because I don't think that John Cena and The Miz was worse than that match. No way. I don't think Undertaker and Sid, well, okay, never mind. That should stay where it's at. But yeah, I don't think that I don't know.
Remember back to WrestleMania 2000, how everyone wanted to see The Rock versus Triple H in a one-on-one match, but they pushed it back to the next pay-per-views and put that Four Corners match in its place.
Yeah, I think that the John Cena and the Miz should be way further up. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we gonna put them on a list, that's fine, but
the payoff to that happening was a few weeks to a couple of months away, but this entry had a payoff that was going to be a year down the road. Fans were excited, then probably a little let down when The Rock returned to WWE and was announced as part of WrestleMania 27 to serve as the guest host. I mean, yeah, it's not what everyone wanted then, but do you remember the rumors that a 17-year-old Justin Bieber was going to be the guest host? So funny. It's clear that WWE needed Dwayne to add a jolt of electricity to the proceedings.
They got the Miz as the host this year.
Triple H versus the Undertaker felt lukewarm at best, and nowhere was that more on display than the advertised main event of The Miz defending the championship against John Cena. Though he'd held the belt since November, The Miz was still being portrayed as a weak, cowardly, and undeserving champion. Not in that, ooh, I hope he gets beat kind of way, more like, ooh, this is boring and I don't care for it. And then you add a polarizing John Cena into the mix, your chance of the match succeeding drastically go down. Much like what we'd see in Dallas with Triple H and Roman Reigns, fans are forced to choose between two guys they were very tired of seeing, but for different reasons. Not only that, but the outcome felt...
Okay, so I'll give him the wrestler with regret do this. Brian, is it? I'll give him this. I think that he factors in a lot of different factors. It's not just about the match itself, the storyline he talks about, things that make no sense going into them. I think he just covers every basis. So maybe that's why he has his order the way he has it.
Felt like a foregone conclusion that Super Cena was going to come in and win the championship back. Or did it? There's a deliberate reason The Rock was inserted into this program between The Miz and Cena despite not actually wrestling in the match, and it sure wasn't to help put old Mike Mizanin over. The champion was the third wheel in the build and the most pivotal point in the match. A nasty spill on the outside led to Miz getting concussed and the match ending in a double countout, which made fans practically froth with rage before The Rock came to right some wrongs, get the match restarted.
Really? So that was a mistake?
Fans practically froth with rage before The Rock came to right some wrongs, get the match restarted, and promptly cost Cena the match to let The Miz win. The next night on Raw, a match between The Rock and Cena was made for next year's WrestleMania. Not only was this main event match an objectively poor way to end what had already been a crap mania, it was essentially cannibalized in order to help build things for another show a year away, which probably didn't make all those paying fans who were there for that show very pleased. And while we're at it, another F you to them for making us watch Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler.
Oh my
Number
God.
2, Yokozuna versus Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 9. The wrestling trope of big monster debuts and destroys everyone is one that's been rarely pulled off effectively, but perhaps
Roman and Taker are definitely number one. They're definitely
none were as successful as the run Yokozuna had from late 92 to roughly 94. Unlike all the times we'd seen the mid to lower card guys suddenly get a surge of momentum and become main eventers, Yoko's push was unique in that he was a brand spanking new character who was built strong from the beginning. January of 93 saw him win the Royal Rumble match in dominant fashion, and it seemed as if WrestleMania 9 in Las Vegas was going to be his crowning moment, except for the fact that the old king was still hanging around, hoping to get that crown back on himself. Hulk Hogan was thrown into the Mania madness relatively late in the game, but one face-smashing angle with Brutus Beefcake later, the Hulkster was backjacked, and the stage was set for a tag title co-main event that ended
so bad back in the day.
Of course, that wasn't enough for the Immortal One, as Hogan made a pitch to Vince McMahon that there was only one guy who could turn things around while champion, brother. Fast forward to the main event. Bret Hart, the workhorse champion who scratched and clawed his way to the top, defending the world title against the new killer heel in Yokozuna.
That ain't Bret's fault, man.
Bret and Yoko fought in an abbreviated 9-minute match that ended with a new champion after Mr. Fuji threw salt in the hitman's eyes. Soon after the bell, in came Hulk Hogan to, quote, help his, quote, friend Bret by challenging Yokozuna for the belt himself. At this point, my head canon tells me that Bret's telling Hogan to piss off, and he wanted to point to the back, but due to his blindness, he accidentally pointed to the ring, giving Hogan the wrong impression. Within seconds, Hulk Hogan dropped the leg and became WWF champion for a then-record 5th time. It was a blatantly desperate, short-sighted attempt by the company to wave a magic wand and restore its fortunes instead of doing the work and rebuilding the company with younger stars. It's gone down as one of the worst WrestleMania moments of all time, and rightfully so. Bret and Yokozuna had their destinies diverted, but only for a short time, as Hogan was gone from the company company 3 months later, once he realized that his return was not moving the needle. Before I reveal the worst of the worst, here are a couple of honorable mentions. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 12. Now you might be asking yourself, Brian, didn't you just give this match a really high rating when you reviewed WrestleMania 12? And yes, I did, but there are still a lot of caveats attached to it. After Shawn Michaels spent years climbing the ranks in the singles world, 1996 was when the boyhood dream finally came true, with a Royal Rumble victory and then his crowning moment at WrestleMania. To highlight just how good of workers he and the champ Bret Hart were, it was announced that their bout would be contested in the company's first ever Iron Man match. Over the years, this match has been the topic of fierce debate among fans. Is it an all-time classic, or is it overrated and boring as hell? Well, yes. The first hurdle this match had to overcome was its predestined time limit. If a match has to be X minutes long, then you run the risk of fans not being invested and only wanting to tune in at the very end. Even though the match was virtually flawless from a technical standpoint, it was paced in a way that stretched the good stuff out as painfully far apart as possible. 80% of the match was done with map-based chain wrestling and dreaded rest holds, all with a scoreboard red goose eggs for the entire 60 minutes. See, part of the drama of watching a sporting event in which points are awarded is seeing how many of those points can be racked up before time expires. You know, unanswered points, come from behind situations, the score tying up again and again. Stuff like that could have made this Iron Man match truly legendary. Instead,
we were in a different time then, Brian.
The match famously went to a draw, forcing extra minutes under sudden death rules, which HBK would ultimately win. In that way, the payoff made the previous 3,600 seconds of nothing finally worth it, but did it though? The WrestleMania 12 Iron Man match is a paradox. It's a technical masterpiece, but it's also a slogathon. It harkens back to a bygone era of wrestling, while it also is somehow ahead of its time, as what we call work rate has become an integral part of people's enjoyment of modern wrestling. At the end of the day, WWF fans were not conditioned to watch or appreciate a match this long, especially as slow going as it was. I can't in good conscience say it was one of the worst WrestleMania main events, but I also can't ignore how polarizing it is among fans. Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 33. Again, I have to put this on here for how objectively bad it is.
Oh, he got that as an honorable mention? I ain't gonna lie, I was for sure that was gonna be number one. Only reason why I assumed that would be number one is because if you look at, since he just made this a day ago, when you look at Roman's career now, that win, especially if we not just factoring in all the botches that happened in Taker just not being ready, him knowing he wasn't ready, it was just not a good match. And on top of that, it did nothing. On top of that, Taker didn't even retire yet. Like, it was like his last match, but not really. Like,
but at the same time, I feel like I'm kicking a guy when he's down. Plain and simple, The Undertaker had no place being in the ring in a main event at this point, and it was all too evident as the match wore on, and he had a hard time with his signature spots. Meanwhile, Roman, still the babyface that nobody liked, was saddled with the impossible task of putting a beloved...
He ain't doing that but saying what Undertaker actually said in a documentary. Taker said, I had no business being in there at that time. He said, I was not,
legend
he said
out of his misery, which they undid a year later. So thanks for making us cry for no reason, guys. And my pick for the worst WrestleMania main event in history is Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 34. Also known as the peak of WWE's legendary "You'll Eat What We Fix You" era. For a long period of time, it felt as if WWE was so flush with cash that had nothing to do with how good their product actually was, that Vince McMahon was emboldened to do whatever the hell he wanted on TV without a hint of consequence. Finally, his grand vision could unfurl without pause or reservation, and especially none of that pesky fan input. At the center of this vision was the inevitable, inexorable rise of Roman Reigns to the top of the food chain, whether we liked it or not. Manias 31, 32, and 33 all featured Roman in the main event, much to the chagrin of many a fan. Having not gotten it out of his system in 2015, Vince gave us Brock Roman 2 at WrestleMania in New Orleans, but there was no architect to swoop in and save the thing this time. Much like their first match at WrestleMania 31, they tried to play the sympathy card by having Brock just beat the piss out of Roman, even making him bleed. Roman would kick out of a ridiculous 5 F5s, but instead of causing the fans to rally around him, it did the exact opposite. The poor bastards in the ring never stood a chance against the crowd's utter apathy to what they were seeing. The fans booed every move regardless of who was doing it. They chanted boring, and let's not forget those damned beach balls. And to make things even stranger, the match was, for all intents and purposes, designed to get Roman over, yet he lost. The fans got what they wanted, and they were still pissed. Apparently, Brock was so upset with how it all went down that he angrily threw the Universal title at Vince McMahon as he entered the gorilla position afterward. And for that, we stand. This match was the epitome of everything wrong with WWE at the time, a time when they blatantly rested on their laurels and ignored the—
I think he's going by other factors. Because I would even rank the Taker and Roman match in itself worse, worse than this one. But like I said, I think he factors a lot of things in there. So like I said, this is his opinion. I would have gave Taker and Roman that #1 slot, to be honest.
The most important voice of them all, the voice of the fans. It was a match the fans didn't want to see on a show that had lost them hours earlier. For being the ultimate example of Vince McMahon's obstinance while also completely losing the plot, Brock Roman 2 from WrestleMania 34 is my pick as the worst WrestleMania main event of all time. But of course, I've been wrong before. What do you think is the worst Mania main event of all time? I want to hear about it in the comment section below.
Pretty much
and let's all hope I don't have to amend this list after this year's WrestleMania. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it and subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Click that bell icon to get all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
That was funny. I liked that, actually. That was really, really dope. Yeah, it's a lot of, everything that he listed was bad. But yeah, some of the numbers I feel like could be switched, but that boxing match, come on, that was worse than the Roman and Lesnar. That was stupid. He slammed him in the boxing match. So I don't know, but yeah, thank y'all so much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, follow me on all social media platforms. Everything is in the description to today's video.